This is our English 20-1 short story project. The short story we chose to base our project on is The Broken Globe by Henry Kreisler. This story suggests the unwillingness to accept the autonomy of one's partner to think or act independently is destructive of a relationship. This is substantiated in Henry Kreisler's The Broken Globe and how science-orientated Nick wants to reconnect with his heavily religious father after years of no communication and distancing. This is done through the narrator, who acts as a mediator between the two divergent characters when he goes to visit Nick's father in Canada. The conflict between Nick and his father is primarily religion versus science, or more specifically, creationism versus evolution. The father has an intrinsic belief in a flat, geocentric universe in which the flat Earth is in the middle and the sun revolves around it. This is a belief that is embedded in scripture, which caused people in history to believe in it for centuries. Nick's father is very passionate and tries to force his belief onto his son, who contrastingly believes that she moves. When the father finds out that his son believes in a heliocentric universe, he tries to conform his son by telling him that it is false and you will not believe it. This shows the dominating nature of his father, his firmness, and unwillingness to find a middle ground with his son. The father tells us that he's even trapped and locked his son up in the house so he could not go to school, for he would be corrupted by his teacher. The father wanted Nick to internalize what he felt and knew about the earth to subjugate him. It shows how the father imprisoned his child and kept him from learning different ideas. Another example of his unacceptance of other worldviews. However, the son found a way to escape to school, because his own values were so important to him, that he would go to great extents even if it meant he would get diminished and abused, to learn more about what he felt was the truth about the world. When relationships have conflicting worldviews, it may even turn into a competition of arguments to prove their beliefs as the correct one. Having such a strong belief can motivate one to solidify it even more, especially when someone else is trying to disprove it. This may be why Nick decides to become a geophysicist, which is one who studies the earth, because he so desperately wants to prove to his father that what he believes in is not satanic, that it is backed up by science and is therefore the truth. He wants to prove to his father that he is not an idiot who has been corrupted. Another example of competition of arguments to justify one's worldview happens when Nick comes back from school with a globe to prove to his father that she moves. He spins the spherical earth to visualize it to his father, but his father refutes by calling it a toy and smashing the globe, which also metaphorically implies the destruction of their relationship beyond repair. When the father realizes that his son's beliefs are not skewed by his words or by holding him captive, things turn physical and he resorts to beating his son until he believes that the sun revolves around the earth. This is an example of how relationships can become physical because one participant has an opposing view and cannot accept the others to think or act independently. His father explains how he shaked and beat him like he was the devil, and that he made him madder and madder because Nick wouldn't cry or shout out anything, that he would have killed him right there if Nick's mother didn't intervene. This shows the domination and harshness that the father wanted to inflict, because he wanted his son to conform to the same ideas as his own. However, the father is unaware that this abuse is the point where the relationship has become terminated and destroyed forever, that the more he hit and tried to change his son, the more the relationship would deteriorate and the more his son would want to distance himself. His father says, "He goes his way and I go mine," which demonstrates that this dispute caused further tension in the relationship, loss of communication, and held them from discussing any other topics or ideas in their minds to avoid more conflict. After being abused by his dad, Nick replies with, "You can beat me and break my globe, but you can't stop her from moving," which shows that his beliefs are so essential to his being that nothing that his father or anyone could do to him would change it. Shockingly, at the end of the story, the father asks the narrator to send greetings to his son, similarly to how Nick asked the narrator to check up on his father. This shows how after time, people may try to reconnect or attempt to salvage their relationships, but in reality, the conflicting worldviews still exist, and they will likely to be unable to tolerate each other. The Broken Globe manifests the idea of how an unwillingness to accept the autonomy of one's partner to think or act independently is destructive in a relationship. Through the abuse the father inflicted on his son because of the contrasting views on the earth, which resulted in loss of communication, tension, and ultimately loss of love between the two.
A real-life example of a stated theme could be shown in the opposing views of pro-life and abortion. For instance, if the woman in a relationship is pro-life, but her partner is for abortion, their values and worldviews would collide. In a situation like this, man may take control and use his power over the other and have her conform even if she believes it is wrong for his benefit. This would cause the woman to feel weak and vulnerable, having been forced to give up her values and beliefs by the commands of her partner. Not wanting to discuss the situation or talking about it too much may cause disputes and distance between male and female, resulting in separation and isolation from one another. Because of abortion, feelings of anger, betrayal, depression, sadness, and lack of trust would be present within the relationship, causing destruction. These positions could also be reversed in the situation by male and female roles. Not only would the intimate relationship between male and female be destroyed, but also the relationship between oneself, the community, and the family. When you are forced to give up on something that you love, you feel as if you have lost control over your life, leading to a loss in self-confidence, depression, and commitment. It doesn't take long for the community to discover and talk when an individual decides to make a controversial decision, like abortion. This also relates to the deterioration of oneself when people judge you and make assumptions of who you are when they don't know the actual truth. The relationship between family would also be hindered because of a situation such as this, reasons being that their son or daughter acted in an impetuous and careless manner, causing them to worry about the mental and physical state of their son or daughter. For these reasons, destruction would occur in a family relationship, changing the way one perceives that person and creating distance and tough love. After time, people may try and reconnect with one another, but may not be successful because of the history they had and their opposing worldviews, causing differences between them.
In 1925, the Scopes monkey trial had occurred within a community in the South, where John T. Scopes was convicted for teaching Charles Darwin's theory of evolution in his science class. Darwin's theory of evolution proposed that all living organisms found on the Earth today evolved from smaller organisms in a gradual process of natural selection. In that time era in Tennessee, it was against the law to enforce this teaching, where the rest of the Protestant community followed the belief of creationism instead of evolutionism. Because these conflicting worldviews, creationists versus evolutionists, contrasted so harshly against each other, this resulted with a court case of Scopes against the rest of the Dayton community and the destruction of relationships within it. For example, when John Scopes was convicted for teaching his students about evolution, the entire community viewed him as a criminal because what he had done was against the law, and it had gone against the Butler Act. The community also judged, belittled, and diminished Scopes for having beliefs that were dissimilar from the others, where the people of Dayton viewed themselves as superior because they were creationists. When Scopes was arrested in Dayton, Tennessee, over 100 newspaper reporters, tourists, pro-science advocates, and pro-Bible advocates crowded the town eagerly. The court case caused tension between people who sided with Scopes and people who were against his beliefs. This ultimately led to the destruction of relationships within the community, purely based on the worldviews and opinions on the trial. People against John's viewpoints demanded many types of punishments for him, even the suggestion of execution. This shows the extent of punishment people were willing to inflict on others who had different viewpoints, as well as how conflict can easily occur because of an unwillingness to accept one's way of thinking.
Those are just a few examples of how an unwillingness to accept one's partner to think or act independently is destructive of a relationship.